So as of now, we have 31 current active chapters. So you all know that we did the virtual road trip in January. And as part of that process, we also had the chance to, we've been saying we have 34 chapters out there. So that was our chance also to do a little bit of a census to see how many of those 34 chapters that we espoused were actually still active. And what we found is that we actually only had 28 active chapters at that point, so as of January. And then as you know, 3 new chapters have come on since last year, actually just since January. Greater Buffalo, Des Moines, and Richmond, Virginia, who couldn't be with us today. So that's what brought us up to our current number of 31 chapters, which we're very excited about because all of those chapters, we can say with confidence, are going strong. So this I think is an equally interesting number. Right now, actively in startup mode, a couple of whom we've seen today. So we have our friends from Oklahoma City, our friends from New Hampshire. There are 18 more just like you out there, just like Greater Buffalo was 3 months ago, maybe. But 20 that are waiting in the wings to join our ranks, possibly by this time next year. All supported by the lovely Caroline Bolus. We'll talk more about Caroline later. The people love Caroline, not just for her accent. So we also started to hear some of this. This is a little bit about sort of how chapters are growing in sophistication and sort of in structure. And so we'll talk a little bit more about that, bless you. But we have currently, and actually that number based on what I was hearing from a few folks today, as of January we had 8 chapters that have their C3, so who are their own separate nonprofits. One that's a C6, that's actually YNPN New York. 5 that are fiscally sponsored, and then 4 that were in the C3 process. So it sounds like a few have actually submitted already, so this number, well, they're probably still in process if you just submitted. But this is really a really interesting statistic in terms of the fact that, you know, the trend is that most of our chapters are becoming their own independent organizations. And I think it's part of the larger conversation about whether or not that's the trend that we want to continue, or if fiscal sponsorship by the national network is something that we want to revisit. We also heard that a number of chapters have moved to a paid membership model. I would have said this time last year, this number probably would have been closer to 3 or 4. As of January, 9 chapters have launched some sort of paid membership model, which is very interesting given sort of the national conversations we've been having. We have 19 chapters using the national WordPress system right now. How much do we love the national WordPress system right now? Which is also something that's really important to know. This is something that we wanted to provide as a service for the national network, also as a way for us to be able to connect data. That second part hasn't been the case, but it's still a service that we're providing to a number of chapters, especially our newest startup chapters. But it's also part of our conversations going forward in terms of the type of support that National should, or whether or not we want that to be something that National continues to provide. Because I know that a lot of folks have also had success developing on their own platforms. But right now, that's where we stand. States with a YNPN presence. So this does not count startup chapters, but we have a presence. We have a YNPN chapter in 25 states across the country. You guys, the United States, and you know, and if you, you know, a few of these states obviously have multiple chapters in that, but by this time next year, I mean, some of those startups that are on Caroline's list are in places like Anchorage, which is not even on the continent, you guys. It's on the continent. Florida, Hawaii. So it's on the continent. Nobody else does that. But you know, there's that whole Canada thing in between. So you know, the goal has never necessarily been to be, you know, in every state, but the goal has always been to be the most accessible that we can possibly be. And I think this is a really strong representation of how that accessibility is growing, at least in terms of our offline presence. And we're well on our way to being across the country very soon. This last number of members, right? So every year we put a number up here, and it's some loose combination of Twitter followers and people on our listservs. And when I go out and talking, I say we have 40,000 members, because that's probably about how many people we're reaching, and a combination of all of those things. And then I decided when I was putting the slide together, I don't want to say that anymore. I think, and that I think is very related to the conversation that we're having about getting real about what membership means for us. And so I don't know how many members we have technically, but I know that we are a strong network. I know that we are doing really great things, and I think that was strongly represented in the report outs that all of you did. Those are some numbers.